my angels, it's Hailey Reese and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here and I do hope that you are having an absolutely fantastic morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Would it be October if we didn't dive headfirst into yet another terrifying haunted doll experience? I don't think so. Welcome back to my channel, guys, for day 3 of our 31 days of Halloween here on my channel, which for those of you who are new or just want a little refresher, my 31 days of Halloween is a series here on my channel where I upload a new video here every single day from now until Halloween. This year is one that I am just so beyond excited to get into. I have so much content planned for you guys, so many videos that I'm so excited to share with you. So if you do enjoy my content and you would like to see more of me, absolutely make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you're enjoying my content, I would also really love it and appreciate it if you would go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up, and also make sure to click subscribe. It really helps me and my channel, and it helps me to know what content you guys are enjoying so I can make sure that I am making more of it. Today's video is absolutely chilling. Now, whether we like it or not, or whether you believe it or not, haunted dolls are among us. Typically, when there's a haunting involving some sort of a haunted doll, it's to do with a haunting outside of the doll, meaning the space is haunted and the doll movement or the activity surrounding the doll is a consequence of said haunting. Or it's that somebody or some sort of ritual has attached some sort of energy or entity or spirit to the doll. Now, more often than not, when we hear of haunted dolls and experiences, a lot of them are terrifying because, again, it's not the average deceased individual inhabiting inanimate objects. Today, we're diving into a really interesting haunted doll encounter because this haunted doll was created by a young girl who thought she was doing the right thing spiritually, and things take a very dark turn. Now, my warning for you watching this before we get into today's video is to always be careful when you go knocking on the other side. We can go knocking on the door to the other side, but who or what answers it and how long they'll remain once that door is opened is not for us to decide. So you need to be very careful when you go knocking into the world of the paranormal. And today's case is no exception. This experience begins with a 16-year-old girl named Madeline. She was somebody from a very young age who absolutely loved dolls. It started more so with the baby dolls and the dolls that she would play pretend house with. And then as she got older, it got more into collectible dolls. Different types of porcelain dolls or collector's items were becoming her thing to collect over the years. Every single birthday, every Christmas, she was getting some sort of a doll or a collector's item in the world of dolls. Now, she had decided as she had gotten a little bit older and into her early teenage years that she wanted to take her love for dolls to a whole new level. And that was when she established a new love for reborn dolls and the whole reborn world. Now, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with reborn dolls and the world of reborns, it's a whole community apparently. It can get crazy in there. But essentially, they're these beautiful dolls used for multiple purposes among different communities that are so realistic, you guys. I don't know if you've seen these, but some of these babies and dolls, I truly believe you could put in a carrier and carry around all day with people and convince them, other than the lack of crying and attention required, that you are carrying a real life baby. These things look so realistic. Now, some people use reborn dolls for dementia patients, others utilize them for infant loss. There are a number of therapeutic uses for these reborn dolls, but there's also a whole other side to the community of people who just really love them. Some people love them for the art of them, others love them for just the hobby of collecting, and for Madeline, it was no different. She was excited to expand her collection. But anybody who knows the reborn doll world and community knows that these come at a very high cost. So for a young teenager, it was a really big ask to ask for these reborn dolls, and it was very rare that she would receive one. At the time of her 16th birthday, Madeline said she'd collected around 3 or 4 reborn dolls. And so when her grandmother gifted her a giant box, she was hopeful that perhaps she could be adding to her collection. Now, her and her grandmother had always shared a love for these dolls. There was a real energetic bond between the two of them, a real spiritual bond too, which we'll get to in a moment. It is relevant to the story. But Madeline ended up opening up this box to a doll unlike anything she had ever seen. She described this doll as beautiful, but it was unlike any sort of lifelike doll she'd ever seen. It was a toddler doll, so it was bigger and was the size of that of a 3-year-old. So imagine a doll that looks insanely realistic, that's also the size of a 3-year-old. So it was like this giant human-like doll. And Madeline described it as immediately feeling different than any doll she had ever seen. She looked at this doll and it felt like she was looking into the eyes of a child. Madeline described it more so as it felt like there was light and life behind the eyes. Like when the eyes were looking at her, they were far beyond realistic. It was almost too realistic. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that the doll felt realistic and looked so realistic and had all of these feelings attached because it had some sort of energy attached to it. But with this case, everyone is fairly certain that the doll came with only the grandmother's positive energy and the creator's energy attached to it. Now, are there people who have their theories as far as where the doll came from and a couple of other strange things? Absolutely. But the doll itself wasn't meant to be a spiritual doll. There wasn't meant to be any attachments to it. And for the first couple of years of having the doll, Madeline said it stayed within her collection and collected its space perfectly. It really just felt like a beautiful add to her doll collection. Which, can I just say quickly, I have such a respect for people who have a giant doll collection that they allow to look at them on a daily basis. Like the idea of hundreds of dolls just staring at me, I don't know. Now, at 18 years old, Madeline would go to college, and obviously it was just unrealistic for her to bring every single doll with her to her college dorm. And honestly, it also felt a little bit strange too. So Madeline felt like bringing all of these dolls with her to college would just be a little bit strange. And beyond that, she knew that she'd be sharing a college dorm with somebody else and didn't know how they would feel about the dolls. So initially, Madeline had left all of her dolls back home while she went to attend college. Now, Madeline did great in college. She hit it off with everyone and specifically really liked spending time with her roommate, Layla. Layla and Madeline seemed to hit it off almost immediately. And when holidays came around and she had nowhere to go, she decided to go with Madeline back to her family's for the holidays. And so they did. The two of them went back home and were enjoying the holidays together, spending time together, when she would be introduced to Madeline's collection of dolls. Now, Madeline kept all of her dolls in her bedroom. She had a wall of dolls, basically. It took up almost all of one of her bedroom walls, and it was all of her dolls situated on shelves nicely. And right away, Layla was drawn to this childlike doll. It was unlike any doll she'd ever seen. And she remembered saying what a cute little boy the doll was. Now, a couple of nights into the two girls being back at Madeline's parents' house for the holidays, they decided to go out and purchase a Ouija board in order to have some spooky fun. Yeah, that was their autumn festivity of choice, was pulling out a Ouija board or going and purchasing one and bringing it out. And they decided to do so. The two girls pulled out the Ouija board and started communicating with a spirit that would initially call itself Louie. Now, Louie took a specific liking to Madeline, and the girls would spend hours the first night communicating back and forth with Louie. They described Louie as a cheeky spirit who really wanted them to tell more about themselves, but yet would simultaneously begin telling them things about themselves. And Madeline remembers describing feeling as though her friend might be the one pulling the strings of the planchette, so to speak, kind of navigating, because all of the things that Louie was saying that he knew about Madeline were things that like weren't that crazy, right? Like she's thinking perhaps my roommate could know this stuff. The two girls continue to play and then decide that they want to close out the Ouija board. And that was when Louie asks the girls if he can stay with them. Now the girls start asking, how would you stay with us? And that's when the Ouija board spelled out doll. Now the two girls said that they felt like the room just stopped. It was like there was so much laughter in the room between the two of them. They were having so much fun chatting with Louie. This was all fun and games. And then all of a sudden, when it acknowledged the doll and it's wanting to stay, it felt different. Now, at first, Madeline was like, absolutely not. Like, what would you even do? And the spirit persistently asks if it can please stay with them by living in the doll. Now, Madeline's roommate, Layla, thought that this was hilarious. And this was another thing that made Madeline think that Layla was messing with her. She thought it would be so funny to say yes and to allow the spirit of Louie to go into this toddler-like doll, this doll like unlike any she'd ever seen before, and that they could bring the doll back to college, and it would be so funny to be there with this Ouija board spirit doll named Louie that looked realistic. Layla convinced Madeline that it would be hilarious, that they could like pull out the Ouija board and people could talk with Louie, and they could like have the doll as their mascot at college. And so the doll could just basically be like this fun thing for their dorms. And so Madeline, despite feeling really uncomfortable, decided why not? Because as I had mentioned earlier, Madeline's grandmother was a really spiritual, hocus pocus type of lady. She loved Halloween. She loved specifically crocheting Madeline Halloween-like stuff. And so she thought her grandmother would think it was absolutely hilarious if she had this doll from her that looked so real become Louie the ghost. And so that's what the girls did. They ended up bringing the doll back to the dorm after saying yes to Louie inhabiting the doll. Now at first, apparently everything was all fun and games. The girls were enjoying it. On the weekends, people would come over and they would talk with Louie, and they were like getting to know this spirit, you guys. It seemed like something cool. Like they were talking with this spirit. It would tell them things that had happened that the others wouldn't know. And they really started to believe that they were in fact talking to Louie. But Louie really had this attachment to Madeline. Madeline started having these dreams about Louie's spirit, and Louie just always wanting to be around Madeline. Madeline's roommate described it as Madeline became very reluctant to even share Louie with people. She became almost obsessed with the board, with the doll, with communicating. She started having like all of these inside conversations with the doll. And these were things, guys, that nobody else could know. This doll was telling her things through the Ouija board, or the spirit now within the doll was telling her things through the Ouija board that nobody could know. The doll was giving her the answers to things, and what Madeline was predicting through information from the doll was coming true. Things that she would ask it were coming true. But the roommate started to notice that Madeline started becoming dark and angry, and all Madeline wanted to do was talk to this doll all the time. Madeline started experiencing what she could only explain as a spiritual attack. She wasn't sleeping. She wasn't able to eat. She was experiencing sleep paralysis. Her dreams were consumed by nightmares, and her roommate even remembered her saying, "Dolls used to be my favorite thing, and all that Louie does is haunt me." And when they would ask her, well, why don't you just return Louie back home? Why don't you just stop talking to Louie? Madeline would never give them an answer as to why she couldn't stop talking with Louie. It got to a point where Madeline's roommate had to find new living arrangements because things were becoming so dark and terrible living there with Madeline and Louie. She would wake up in the night with bruises, with scratches. She would wake up to Madeline standing next to her bed, holding the doll and staring at her with a blank expression on her face. And when she would try to wake Madeline up out of this trance, out of this sleepwalking, Madeline would slowly just turn and return to her bed with no memory of it. But every single time, there was Louie. This went on for a very long time until Madeline began hearing full-on voices. Now, Madeline was experiencing these things that were speaking to her, these energies that she claimed Louie brought. That's what she kept telling everyone, was that Louie was bringing them to her, and they would talk to her nonstop. And it got to a point where she would absolutely lose her mind asking them to stop. But when she would try to shut them out, bad things would happen. Madeline was completely isolated and living alone with whatever she had let inside of that doll. Let's take a moment here, because I talk about this a lot in a lot of my videos, but I do think it's very, very important to consider. Demons require permission to enter. And while Ouija boards themselves are not inherently evil, they are a vessel to the other side. And the other side, much like our world, much like all things, there is light, but there is also darkness. And when you open up that door, as I say, you don't always get to decide what answers or when. And if you're not doing the proper things to protect yourself, well, you could communicate with something very dark and in some cases even evil. But when we look at this particular experience, Louie, this entity, asked permission to enter into that doll and to stay with Madeline, essentially. And it latched on. What's really eerie about this experience is that it's lived on by the roommate. Madeline apparently ended up moving back home after college, was never the same after associating with Louie, and eventually even apparently stopped talking about Louie altogether, but was never seen without the doll in her time at the college. If anybody went to her dorm, the doll was always there, so it wasn't like she'd gotten rid of it. And nobody knows what or who Louie was. As I mentioned, it is highly unlikely that Louie was a lost soul looking for a place to inhabit. Again, most spirits do not choose to inhabit inanimate objects, but somehow whatever this was formed an attachment to Madeline, formed an attachment to the doll, and latched on. And the terrifying thing about this story, guys, is I don't know what happened next. Whether Madeline was rid of this spirit or this entity, I don't know. All I can do is hope and pray and send love and light that Madeline was able to escape whatever formed that attachment. But I will say that the roommate actually had to go on and do a bunch of cleansing on herself because she never felt the same after playing with it either, and has sworn she will never touch a Ouija board again. I think it's really unfortunate that for somebody like Madeline who loved her dolls, I mean, it's really presumptuous of me to assume that she no longer loves her dolls, but I do think it's really disheartening, at least to me it is, that she loved these dolls so much, played with the Ouija board, and whatever came there that day and formed the attachment ruined at least one of the dolls for her. I mean, at least I can assume. For me, it would have anyway, and that's really, really sad. And trust me, guys, as somebody who grew up in a haunted house, has seen ghosts and spirits since I was a child, has had countless experiences growing up in the haunted house and all of my paranormal investigations, it can be so much fun diving into the spiritual world and the world of the paranormal and the unbelievable. But where there is light, there is also darkness. I do want to note, though, I always feel the need to state this. There is no darkness that will ever overpower the light. And at the end of every dark tunnel, there is light. Do not be overcome by evil. Overcome evil by doing good. And if you are going to dive into the world of the unknown, keep your spirits high, your vibrations high, protect yourself in a white light or a protective shield, and just watch for the warning signs. Because while many people have beautiful, beautiful experiences, you don't want to be the one who has a dance with the darkness. Well, you guys, that is it for today's haunted doll experience. What do you guys think of it? What do you think happened? What kind of entity do you think this was? And why do you think they chose Madeline? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you have any video requests, make sure to let me know those as well. I am uploading every single day for the remainder of the month. So definitely let me know what it is that you want to see. Make sure you're subscribed and your post notifications turned on so you don't miss it. And I will do my very best to create that content for you. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed, but you do enjoy my content, I would greatly appreciate it if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button. And please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until tomorrow, I love you. Bye, guys.